Hello, dear listeners. It's that time again when we stroll through the paths of ambition, desire, and success. Welcome to the Dare to Declare podcast, where we explore the enchanting world of giant manifestors who've turned their visions and goals into the stuff of legends. I couldn't help but wonder, how do some people create the lives they've always dreamed of? Is it the magic of manifesting, the power of perseverance, or perhaps just a dash of serendipity? Well, dear friends, grab your coffee cups because we're about to spill the tea on fascinating journeys of those who dare to dream big and make it happen. Join me as we sip on success stories and ponder the ever-enticing question, can we all manifest our dreams into reality, or is it just an urban fairy tale? I'm your host, Debbie Sluice, and I'm here to guide you through the labyrinth of achievement with heart and soul. Ready to dare to declare? Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Dare to Declare podcast. I am so excited to have Ron Spreeuwenberg on today's call. We have known each other for a number of years, and it goes back to my former career in childcare. And so Ron is a Canadian entrepreneur. He's an executive advisor, and he founded and led the growth of a Toronto-based software company as the CEO. He's raised over $90 million from investors, including the Bain Capital. Previously, Ron was a management consultant. He worked out of Ottawa, Toronto, Amsterdam, and the London offices. He currently advises other growth-oriented technology and social impact companies in Canada and abroad. He holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and a Bachelor in Chemical Engineering from the University of Waterloo. He currently lives with his family in Toronto. And he told me that he was just back in my neck of the woods just recently. And so this is what's so cool is that I don't want to give away, but when I first met him, that was my first aha and super big surprise. So that he's actually from my area. So welcome, Ron. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Debbie. It's really nice to see you again.
So, yeah, our first introduction, we were trying to figure the date. Your company started around 2013, and you were at an event where there was a speaker, a provincial speaker, and it was kind of like a vendor style. And I remember walking past, and to my embarrassment, what actually caught my attention was the holder that you had the little iPad in, because it kind of looked like a Teletubby. And it caught my attention, and I was curious, came over, and I discovered, oh no, you're not all about the tablets, you're about the software. But I love that. And then as we were talking, and you said, well, where are you from? Because I was I think a couple hours from my home. And I said, oh, you probably never heard of it. Between London and Windsor, Ontario. You said, I know where that is. And then I said, Chatham. And you said, yeah, I know where that is. I said, Blenheim. And you said, yeah, I know where that is. I grew up there. And I said, are you kidding me? So, there's no coincidences. Do you remember that meeting?
Yeah, it's funny because I use the same strategy of honing in of what people know. And so you get smaller and smaller, see where people stop. But I absolutely remember those were the very early days. And I'm glad to hear our marketing strategy worked with our iPad cases because they did a good job of grabbing people's attention. And as soon as you said you were from the area, I knew we'd have a good conversation.
Yeah, and it made me feel right away this sense of trust for you as well. And I was, and I'm going to ask this question in a minute, so curious about why, if you listen to your bio, your background, and then I'm like, software for childcare. And, again, I'm dating myself, but when I started in childcare 30 plus years ago, everything was pen to paper. And I remember floppy disks, and I remember doing all of it that way. And then to think about that we could automate and streamline with software just was so radical. And then also, as you also included more of the new pedagogy, it was super exciting, and I was really curious about it. So that's where we jumped on board, and we were definitely one of your early adopters. So yeah, my question is, what inspired you to create a software for childcare?
Yeah, so that there's a very long answer to that. I'll try to do my best to keep it as succinct as possible, because there's a lot of different aspects at play for sure. But I mean, first and foremost, I knew I always wanted to start my own company. This was something that went back to my college days, or if we want to have an even longer conversation about it, right back to my childhood, and my father and his father before him. And so entrepreneurship was something that I wanted to try my hand at. And so that was sort of the first thing. The second thing was, I came to realize, and this was more through business school and my experience there, one of my big takeaways was the importance of social impact and social enterprise. And I knew I wanted to work in a business, in a sector, within a company that was doing good for the world. And so with those two aspects was kind of how I was approaching the next stage of my life and of my career. And I was talking with a good friend of mine who had a toddler and a childcare program, and we were talking about that experience. And it was exactly all what you had described, Debbie, which is like, it was all pen and paper driven. There was really this disconnect between, a younger digital native group of parents coming into the childcare world with their young children and their expectations of service and technology and information at your fingertips, and how the childcare programs were operating as businesses, being mostly pen and paper and offline. So that was kind of the aha moment for us, where the light bulb went off, where we thought, look, like these, we can bring these two worlds together. And not only will the parents love it, because this is, what they're going to expect of their childcare experience, but we can help the childcare programs as well, to make their operations more efficient and bring them, more in line with what their customers and their parents were expecting. And then, as you mentioned, we then also took that a step further to really try to help with curriculum and the education and that aspect of childcare as well, which of course is what early child educators are really passionate about in the field, is working with the children directly.
For sure. And you mentioned something that I'm discovering as I'm speaking with giant manifestors like yourself, how much influence their parents, and in your case, grandparents, have on your young life, but then also how that supported you to become an entrepreneur. Can you share a little bit more about that? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, my grandparents were entrepreneurs in the sense that, we're going back a long time, of course, and that they were farmers. And not only were they farmers, but they moved from the Netherlands to Brazil, which at the time, with a young family, and they ended up having, many kids, and they all grew up there, is a very adventurous move. And my father as well was quite adventurous, immigrating to Canada. And this was before I was born. And I think, with his time in Canada, he always wanted to start his own company. And there was, in fact, a friend of his who had immigrated to Canada around the same time, and he had started his own business. And this was in mushroom farming, actually, which was what his specialty was in. And he worked for a mushroom farm, but he never started his own company. And part of the reason for that was that he had a really bad accident. And this was right around the time that I was born. And it was one of those things where, like, he easily could have died. So it was a very scary experience. And I think it just, and it makes sense. It really kind of changed his outlook on life, because, at that point, it took him a couple of years even just to be able to get back to work at all. And, he was much more risk averse at that point. Like, he was new to Canada. and he just wanted to make sure that he could have the income for his family to continue to, put food on the table and have a roof over our heads. And that kind of, ended his dream, let's say, of starting his own business. And so for me, a big part of it was, I wanted to live out his dream that he never had the chance to do in his lifetime. And he passed away a bit too young as well. And so, I was all these things coming together that really motivated me to want to fulfill that dream.
I feel that when you speak, and when I'm learning as I'm studying more about how our belief system works and our values and how they're shaped by repetition of thought, but also by emotional impact. And so thinking about the accident, even though it was before, still the impact of that accident, I would imagine, impacted you, your life, your passion, your why, and then also your dad passing so young. So thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful. And it really helps me understand a bit more about your why. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And this was something that, even though I wasn't alive at the time, it was very visible in front of you our whole life, because he had some physical ailments that he suffered through for the rest of his life. So even though, I wasn't there at the time, it was something that was always front of mind, because you knew that he was had to make certain life decisions constantly because of what he suffered from that. And yeah, that stuck with me for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. He would be so proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what makes you excited every morning when you get up? What makes you excited?
There's lots to be excited about in life. This is for sure. My 4 and 6-year-old boys are a good start, and we have good fun in the morning as a family, all of us. So that's they are usually the ones who get me out of bed, whether I'm excited or not about that. The biggest thing for me is the world is such an amazing, fascinating place. There's so much to learn. There's so much opportunity and things to accomplish. So I'm constantly thinking about, what am I going to learn today? What can I build? Who can I connect with? These things all come together for me to wake up excited every day. It's the new challenges that I look forward to. And for me, that's something that's really important. I always need a new challenge. I need to challenge myself. If I've reached a plateau, I need that next thing to keep me learning and growing. And for me, that is what is exciting, is that constant growth and that constant learning.
Yeah. And I would say that's the key to your success as well, is setting that new marker, that new goal. So I'm curious, the other thing that I know is we don't do this on an island. We don't do this by ourselves. So you said looking for other people. So who would you say is your mentor, and who have you studied in terms of your business? But I'm imagining you also have done your own work in terms of your personal development. I'm curious about that side of you.
Yeah, good question. In the early days, I really didn't have, much of a network, frankly. In terms of mentors, advisors, coaches. I tapped into the tech ecosystem as much as I could. So, here in Canada, in Toronto, they have Mars Discovery District, and they run some programs in some of the regional centers as well that aren't in Toronto. So I was able to benefit from some of those specific events. But I was really on my own in a bit of an island, frankly, for a number of years. I did have the benefit of having a couple of people involved in the business from an early days who I could at least kind of bounce ideas off of. And I had my co-founder and CTO who we worked together. So that was also very helpful for me through that time. And I also, frankly, connected very closely with our customers and our employees. So, that was really, my network, so to speak. As the company grew, I had to grow as well. And so I did start becoming more purposeful about getting, specific supports, like a CEO coach that I worked with who was very valuable in terms of thinking through some of the team dynamics as we grow and some of those new challenges as the company got bigger. I also had a coach which I worked with in the US who brought kind of a different perspective on things and was very experienced in having seen, our kind of journey through many different companies. So I think those were like a couple of my key, folks that I worked with as we grew. And certainly they were very important because as you grow, like kind of like what a lot of high growth coaches and mentors talk about is like, sometimes the company will grow faster than the founder. And then it's a tricky spot, right? So you have to make sure you're always growing and learning with your company, because the challenges of when you're, a 1-person company, a 10-person company, 100-person, and 1,000-person, like they're vastly different, and you need to do things vastly differently. So I was lucky to find those people along the way.
Amazing. Are you a 1,000-person company?
No.
Oh.
We're I think probably about 180 people or so.
Okay, that's amazing. Because when I met you, I think there was you and the co-founder and maybe an assistant.
Yeah, we would have been less than 5 people probably.
Yeah. Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so can you describe, I'm curious, have you had, you said growth, but have you had any quantum leaps where it just was like really fast, or you just had this brilliant idea and just manifested, in extraordinary results? Can you share that?
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple of cases where I would say we were ahead of the curve, and as a result, that did result in I would say, faster growth trajectories of the business. A couple that come to mind. One was actually around a lot of what was happening in Ontario in our earlier days. And this was around the, first it was the elect curriculum, and then it was how does learning happen? And, part of it was being lucky that we were based in a jurisdiction where I think we were a little bit more progressive in terms of thinking about the sector and learning in early childhood versus the US, where a lot of our customers were. So we could take a lot of the learnings that we were having. And part of this was being very close to our customers and listening to them and understanding their challenges and what was important to them, and then adopting that into our product and allowing our other customers to benefit from that more progressive mindset. And so this was kind of probably sort of like 3 to 4 years into the journey. And this gave us a big leg up over our competitors because we were listening to our customers and we were more progressive in what people in our sector really cared about, which was learning at an early age. Yeah. The second one was also related to the education side, which was we saw that our competitors were very focused on the tech side of things, and in particular, like the administration, operations, and management of the child care center programs. And I always had a vision which was more around a more holistic platform that also not only helped child care programs with the things they didn't love doing every day, like administration and operations, but what they were passionate about, the education and the curriculum and the pedagogy. And so we actually acquired a company that's all they do. So like they are specialists in this area and creating content and curriculum for learning at an early age. And that was really, we were the first company to move in that direction, and that really is like further established our brand. And you had mentioned before about trust and that's very important in a sector where we're dealing with young children, and showing the world that like we were very invested in children's learning and development, and we want to continue to be more involved and more invested in that. I think further built that trust with the community, and that was on top of us being a benefit or B corporation, which I think was another aspect that came into that sort of trust and that brand that helped accelerate our growth. And I think is one of those things where it's like, it's not an obvious thing to do per se. In hindsight, it's easy to say that it was, but was kind of part of that vision of a social impact company. That's how we started. You asked me, why did I start something in childcare, software in childcare? For me, that social impact was important. And, becoming a B Corp, investing in software and products and services that could help with learning and development at a young age, those were things that were important to me and important to us as a company. And it benefited those children and those programs. And it also benefited us as a business. And so that's the kind of social enterprise, dynamics that really works.
Yeah. And, you walk your talk, and how I know that is just in the practical way. I remember you were moving into some new offices in Toronto, and I had just made a connection with a local artist here in Chatham who works with duct tape. And actually, it's during the COVID where he had people all over the place do messages on the outside of buildings with duct tape. But it was just brand new, this idea of duct tape and kind of graffiti. And so I asked you, you asked me as one of your customers, like, hey, do you think your school age kids could make something that we could then display? And I was so honored. I was like, that is so cool. So when you talk about connection to your customers, I mean, that's an amazing connection. And so the kids did something that represented your rural Blenheim area. They did like a little canvas, but then we also did a huge tarp. And the kids used the duct tape along with facilitation from this local artist. It was just such a win-win-win. And I just love that you were open to that and that you asked. It was just super cool. So, some people pay lip service to things you're talking about, but I know that you're the real deal. And this is also evidence in your success. So.
Yes, I remember that. I love that. And the team loved it too. It helps them feel connected with the customers and the children and the programs that we're serving. So, and I remember actually the canvas as well. It had the Blenheim Water Tower and the cornfields, and it had real corn on it. I totally remember this. Yes.
Yeah. So what would you say? So it says in your bio, and I was surprised to read this, that in addition to your own company, it sounds like you're also a consultant for other companies, growth companies. So you want to talk about that? Go ahead.
Yeah. More and more, I'm starting to advise some companies, both here in Canada, but abroad as well. And really those, a lot of those companies are aligned to a lot of the values that, I had when I started my business and when I was running the company. And so that's been very fulfilling for me as well, to kind of pass on some of my learnings. And as I mentioned, like in the early days, I didn't have much of a network. And, some of the folks I'm working with, some of them are immigrants to Canada and they don't know many people here. Some of them are experts in their field, but may not have much of a network or advisory group in sort of the more technology related aspects of their businesses. And so that's been a nice way for me to kind of give back to the community and help other folks grow and see their visions through to reality.
I was on my own coaching call this morning, and my coach said that if you want $1 million, you need to give $1 million in service. And it sounds like that I don't know if that's something you've heard before, but it sounds like that definitely is your mantra, and that it maybe isn't this really robust network, but you were all about the service and have used that to grow your company. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I do. I really believe in this idea of community, and maybe part of that is growing up in a small community like Blenheim. And I just remember, even when I was really young, friends doing things for me that I thought, wow, like, you're not even family of mine, but you're willing to really, go out of your way to help me. And so that's really, something that stuck with me. And I had people in the early days of my company who I would just reach out to coldly, and they would meet me and help me out. And I thought, wow, like thinking back now, like that's amazing. Like they're probably so busy, and I'm not paying them any money. They have no benefit really other than to try to help me. And so, that's what I'm trying to do now. And, I really think that, other folks will pay it forward.
Absolutely. That's how universal laws work. Absolutely. Cause and effect. So that's a beautiful lead in to this question around legacy. So you talked about your two boys and also your business. So what do you desire for your legacy to be?
Yeah. Legacy. That's a complicated question. I think for me, it's really about this community and this giving back. Legacies in terms of names and accomplishments, only last so long. I think what is universal and lasts potentially forever is, how you treat other people, how you live in this world, and are supportive to people who may need help and giving back. And so, for me, I think, whether that's through helping other entrepreneurs and founders, whether it's through my children and how they, behave and treat others and live in this world, I think that to me is probably the biggest thing. It's qualitative, and it's not about me. It's not about Ron Spreeuwenberg. It's not about my company or any, specific accomplishments for me. It's more of, that way of treating people. And that I think goes back to your earlier question too. When part of starting my own company was, because of my father and my family and my experience there, but also the way I ran the company and our core values as a company came from a lot of the values that I saw in my father. And so, it's kind of a similar idea in life more broadly, I think, for me too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So my last question for you is around your company just had a name change.
Yes.
So that caught me off guard. That was really, really cool. And so what's next? So is this a reset, refresh with a name change? Can you talk about what's the vision?
Yeah, I mean, the company has changed a lot over the years. So it's been 10 years. The company has been Hi Mama for 10 years. A big part of that name, Hi Mama, was around how we started, which was parent communication. It was about, helping the parents and the early childhood educators connect and share moments and memories of what's happening within the childcare programs. But since then, it's become so much more. We're supporting on the operational and administration side. We've gone into education and curriculum. We have a learning and development platform for early childhood educators. And so I think really the new name Lilio is trying to encompass everything we're doing as a company, which is much, much more than where we had originally had started out. And that's an amazing thing. And I think it really reflects all the success that the company has had and all the hard work people have put into it.
Well, congratulations on your success. Thanks for being here with me. Is there any final tips, like in terms of you had an idea and you acted on it and you asked people for help, even though they were like way above you in terms of experience? Is there any tips that you can give to someone who's listening here who wants to be an entrepreneur as well, and who looks at your success and desires that as well? What would you offer to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest thing is really to approach it as kind of like a project. So I think sometimes people will be overwhelmed at the beginning, because the idea of starting your own business, how do I incorporate my business? How do I think about how do I hire somebody? How do I get my first customer? There's so many things that are whirling around in your head. And it's a lot. So my recommendation is to think of it as a project. Think about whatever your idea is, whatever you're excited about. Do it in like the easiest, most simple way possible that you can start moving it forward. It's all about moving forward, and it takes baby steps to get going. So, maybe the first step is just doing a survey of like what your business idea is, and go to your friends and family, or, go on the internet and go use Google survey or something and send it to, 50 people and see what they say. And then you've already like created something. You're going to get people's input and response. And that's exciting, because you're already like creating something. You've created information and feedback that you can then take the next step. So that's what I would say is get started with the minimum amount of effort you can. And that's going to be 1,000 times more progress than just leaving it in your head.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Ron. This has been such a pleasure. So great to catch up. And I wish you much success in all of your family life and your business life. So thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Debbie. It's so great to be on your show.